The following is a Podcast One Minnesota production.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Oh, you betcha, yeah.
If it's made in Minnesota, who's making it and how?
Yeah, you got that right.
It's the makers of Minnesota, focusing on the products and services uniquely made in Minnesota, and conversations with the makers, entrepreneurs, and innovators in Minnesota about how they conceived of their products and how they brought them to market. With Stephanie Hansen, it's the makers of Minnesota.
Hi, this is Stephanie Hansen. You are listening to the Makers of Minnesota podcast, where we talk to cool makers doing cool things in the state of Minnesota. And today we have Andy Wright, who has an organic barbecue sauce company called Triple Crown Organic Classic Barbecue Sauce. Welcome to the program.
Thank you very much, Stephanie. I'm very happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm happy to have you. Let's just talk about the business angle for a second. You did not start Triple Crown Barbecue Sauce, so how did you find out about it?
Well, I happened to be working at an organic food distributor at the time. So this was 6 years ago.
Yeah.
6.5. And I was the person who brought Richard's barbecue sauce, which was called Triple Crown, into our warehouse, and I was selling it. So I was intimately aware of it, and I loved the product myself.
And the story about Richard is kind of interesting. He apparently entered the sauce at the state fair, and he won 3 blue ribbons, 94, 97, and 2001, which is really kind of cool. That's hard to do.
Exactly. And it was a lifelong hobby of his.
Uh-huh.
And the contest certainly was affirmation of the product itself, and became the name of the product. It translated into Triple Crown, the 3 blue ribbons at the state fair.
Yep,
that's where it came from. And in any case, he had decided to commercialize the business for a couple of years, and that was the time when I became acquainted with the product. And then, for a couple of different reasons, he decided that he wanted to not be in the business of selling barbecue sauce commercially. And so what was going to happen was the whole business was going to go away, because it's hard to sell a new and small business in a category of products that's so competitive.
I was going to ask about that, because the sauce category, and barbecue sauce in particular, is a super competitive field.
Yes. We say there are few barriers to entry. So if you're interested in making this product, on almost any scale, you can make it. It's not a complex product to produce. So hence we have, in certain stores, you'll see a wall of barbecue sauce. In almost like 3 sections. For example, you might see like 30 or 40 different brands at a store.
That's a lot. Yeah.
And so it didn't seem like a good idea based on that. Based on the fact that there's so many types of barbecue sauces out there. But I also knew that I loved the product, and I thought, well, why not? Because it's just going to go away.
What did you love about it? Like, why did it stand out to you? Because if you were selling organic products, you'd been exposed to lots of things.
Well, it was the balance of the recipe, and this was the classic recipe that we've altered a little bit, because at the time it was not a certified organic product.
Right.
And so that was one of the changes that we made relatively early on. But it was the fact that it was a true Kansas City style sauce that had broad appeal. And to me, I wanted to take a product that I loved that had broad appeal and then just take it up a notch by making the organic, the certified organic thing happen, as well as making it a gluten-free and vegan product, so to broaden its appeal.
Yep. So you had experience in that world, the organic world, which tends to come with either vegan or gluten-free. So when you got the product, did you know right away that could be like something that would make you stand out?
Well, I knew the competition, or I know that the competition is fierce out there, and I know in regard to packaged food, and I also realize that niches, as is quite obvious now, any niche that you can occupy that appeals to people that have special dietary needs is a big deal. Mm-hmm. So if we, first of all, the product has to taste great, but if you can check a few boxes after that, you're going to put yourself in a much better position in the marketplace. And that's certainly why we did well right off the bat in the co-ops. And then as we got into Whole Food stores, people obviously they have to love the product, but if they have dietary either restrictions or just preferences that you can connect them, you can connect them with a product that works for them. Wow. I mean, it works, and it did work.
Yeah. So when you were selling organic products at the distributorship, and then you take on this barbecue sauce, do you mind it? Did you buy the product up front, or did you have a relationship with Richard that you bought him outright, or was it that he had a percentage over time?
Yes. Now it seems like ancient history. So I had left the distributor, so now I was doing other projects, and then I bought the company from him, so the name and the recipe and the website and all that, and then we provided part of the contract was a percentage of sales for the first 3 years.
Okay,
so I almost forgot about that. It's like,
well, a lot of times when people are curious about selling a company, because it's rare, I think, that you sell a company outright. There's a lot of times performance agreements that are on the back end of the agreement to keep everybody sort of interested and keep the momentum going. So, like, do you remember your first day where you were the owner of this product and like your thoughts that you were having?
Most of my thoughts were, is this crazy? Because I still feel that way actually today to some extent, because it's not something that I've had experience in doing on my own. I've worked for larger companies. So for the distributor, I had worked for Organic Valley out of Wisconsin, but that was marketing work. So I was never actually technically responsible for producing and selling a product.
Yeah.
But I had been surrounded by different products and the marketing thereof, for many, many years, most of my professional life.
So from the get-go, you knew you needed to get a co-packer and kind of go that route. You're not versus sitting in a kitchen making the sauce yourself. Right.
And that was key. And if that hadn't happened, this wouldn't be happening right now, because I had found the right match in a company in Northeast Minneapolis.
What is that company?
They're called Fisher's United Supply.
And you said it's a family-owned co-packer?
Yeah, it's a family-owned business. They're actually, the base of their business is food distribution. So they have a small warehouse in Northeast, but they also have the facilities to produce products like ours, because they had been producing products that they were distributing themselves since I don't know when, a long time.
It's good for people to know about, because people are always looking for good co-packers. And
because honestly, there are a lot of things that go into making something work out well, and without Fisher's, this never would have worked out well, because for one thing, the economics just don't work out well in terms of the time that you have to spend if you're actually producing something,
right.
And then also and really important is the supply lines for ingredients. And so Fisher's, being an ingredient distributor, has very, very long-term relationships with ingredient suppliers. Mm-hmm. And honestly, in terms of making the product cost-effective at retail, we had to focus, especially in the first 2 years, of getting our ingredient costs down. And that was all about two things: volume, purchasing, and finding the right suppliers.
Right. So that's kind of what you're doing the first couple of years. You're getting the product fine-tuned with your co-packer. You're getting your ingredients solid. You're trying to figure out what your price point is going to be.
Yes.
Most makers don't have like the depth and level of sales experience that you do.
That's true.
So has that been like, that's your ace in the hole, right?
Well, I had a pretty clear understanding of what works at retail, so I was able to look at the price point issue and get to a decision point really quickly. And knowing at the time that, in fact, our production costs were too high to justify that price, but I had faith that we could get our production costs down over the years, and we did.
So is there like a checklist in your hand, by the way, where you're like, okay, I'm a small business person. I am making this product. These are the areas that I need to make sure we're hitting it out of the park before I take this to market any further.
Well, the most important thing is quite obvious, is that your product has to have appeal. Mm-hmm. So, if it doesn't, that's the thing, one of the things that I knew up front, this is an appealing product, even before it became an organic
How
product.
do you know that, though? Because everybody thinks that they're like, oh, I've got, my Janice's sauce and it's really great. Janice says so, and so does everybody else. Like, you've been around the block. Can you look at a product and just be like, oh, yeah, I don't know if this is going to work? Or,
well, it's such a you have to, I mean, it can be complicated. I mean, Janice or whoever, there are a lot of great recipes out there, but the question is, can you take that recipe and make that product in a cost-effective manner and distribute it in a cost-effective manner? And is there the demand out there? I mean, this goes back to the original challenge of being in a category that is so loaded with competition. People buy it. I mean, it's not some. It's people.
Yep.
There's
You're
a
not
there's a large
creating a
demand.
new-
Yeah, we're not right. We're not creating some new kind of sauce that no one's ever heard of. That, wow, it might be great, but no one's ever heard of it, and there's really no demand. So then you'd have to go out and educate people.
And doesn't that seem daunting? Like, there's been people that have sat in your chair here that have talked with me that, you know, they have a great sauce, but they're having to like really educate people all the time about what it is.
It's super daunting because you're talking, I mean, even with what we've done with a familiar product, it takes a lot of time and energy to market the product to people effectively, the demos, the events, the just getting out the word on your product. But if you have to go that next step and you're actually trying to create different patterns that don't exist right now in terms of, oh, I'm going to start buying this purple sauce that I've never used before. I love it, and I'm going to keep buying it, and I'm going to keep using it. Well, that costs a lot of money. I mean, generally speaking, like you'd have to have a small fortune or just the most miraculous product in the world.
Right.
But still, changing people's habits as, you know, as an older person now, I realize that it's pretty tough. It's tough to change people's habits. You know, people fall into grooves, and there are certain people that are always trying new things, but most people aren't.
You've expanded the product line so that you have more than just the classic sauce. What other brands do you have, and why did you expand and extend?
Well, to me, there were variations on our recipe that were obvious to explore because there are people. I mean, the second product that we made was a cayenne, which is a hotter version of the classic. And then this last winter, we came out with two new products. And partially, I mean, I'm inspired about both of these products, but also when you're growing in retail, it really helps to have multiple products. Not necessarily every retailer will carry all of your products, but the more what they call facings, the more bottles that you have on a shelf, if someone's looking at a shelf and they see Triple Crown 3 times or 4 times instead of once or twice, it's going to make a huge difference. In terms, I mean, again, the product has to be something people want, but they're not going to notice you. It's easy to get lost in the retail settings, especially now that we're entering into stores like Cub and larger retailers where it's very easy to get lost, and everyone knows why. We've been treated to a really kind environment. Let's say the first 3 or 4 years when we were just selling at co-ops and specialty retailers and Whole Foods, and you, even with 2 bottles or 3, you'd see us. But as we've gotten out into the meaner world, we really needed more products than we had, and so that's why we just, and I could go into, there's more of a backstory to this, but the fact that we have the new black garlic sauce, which is an aged garlic, completely unique product, and then also the hickory bourbon. As far as I know, there are no black garlic American-style barbecue sauces.
Let's talk about
market.
that, because black garlic is a fairly new ingredient on the trend watch list, but people don't know about it, haven't heard about it. So what was it about black garlic that appealed to you in a barbecue sauce?
Well, okay, so I was completely ignorant of what it was at all up until 13 months ago. I went to the Minnesota Garlic Festival in Hutchinson. And
I love that that's where you found it.
I know. It was a very organic process. So we were next to a black garlic producer from Mankato, and it didn't take more than half of the day, I guess, being next to them and then trying the product and realizing that particular ingredient was going to be awesome. It's a perfect fit for our barbecue sauce because it has the array. It's hard for me to describe what black garlic tastes like. Maybe you have an idea. You know, it's like a smoky, molassesy. It's super pungent, and also there are health benefit claims, which we won't get into. But the flavor profile survives in what I consider to be a pretty rough environment because the Kansas City style sauce that we make is very strong. I mean,
Right.
The flavor, the tomatoes, the whole thing it's hard to put something in there and then know that it's there. Whereas black garlic, it's there.
Right.
And it's not a big part of the recipe, but it completely transforms the experience. And in fact, at events that we've done this year, it's outperformed the original product, the classic.
And it's interesting.
terms of
Yeah,
sales.
people want to try something new, and it's sort of
And they're captivated.
yeah.
And I was captivated early on by the idea, and then we started filling around with recipes last fall, and then we had our first production run last December,
That's
which
so
was
cool.
quick. It took about 4 months.
Is it like, on the one hand, I liked your explanation for I need more facings to be in bigger stores and I need to have a bigger part of the shelf. But on the other hand, is it nerve-wracking as the inventor because, it's always cool to work on something new, but every SKU dilutes the emphasis on the original?
That's true. I mean, it's a balancing act.
Yeah.
I didn't. It took me a long time to come out with a third and fourth product because I didn't feel it.
Yep.
I wasn't inspired. I was like, I don't want to make something just for the sake of making something. There's so many different barbecue sauces out there, and I was just like, I don't want to do a copycat
Yep.
product, and that's why the black garlic caught my attention because I don't really think it dilutes at all from our original. I think it's just a standout product
And it's a good story.
it's a good story, and it's always interesting to talk about with people because most people, I'd say about 10% of the people we meet know what that ingredient is.
Right.
And then it's not at all like fresh garlic. I mean, it doesn't even resemble fresh garlic in terms of the flavor or the aroma.
Do you remember getting into Whole Foods? Do you remember getting that call?
So there were a couple stages there. We were really fortunate. I was just telling someone about this the other day. It's like, how did you get into Whole Foods? Well, we were really fortunate in terms of the fact that there were 2 stores opening up during the first year that we were in business.
Mm-hmm.
And they had as a result, they had a local vendor fair, and they invited a bunch of local food companies, and I signed up like a day late, and I got in. I was like, someone told me about it. I'm like, oh my God, I gotta get in this thing. And then anyway, I went. And we got accepted into the new stores that they were building on Hennepin downtown and out in Maple Grove. And also I tell people, regarding this issue that if a store is new, that's a whole different story than an existing store. We tried to get into the other Whole Foods for years and we didn't get in because in order to get into an existing store, they have to kick something out.
Right.
Whereas in a new store, they're just building the set, so we were really fortunate. That's all I can say. And then also, once we did get into those first 2 stores, I did tons of demos myself. So
let's talk about that.
That was integral. It was a little bit over the top, but I knew from my experience in the past in relation to marketing that if you got to get out there and meet people, you have to personalize the product. And one thing, and you have to promote people trying the product. And I know that when you look at competition on the shelves, large companies can't do that.
Mm-hmm.
They can't personalize their product. We don't have many advantages as a small company, but that's one of them.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, that's the guy. That's the Triple Crown guy.
Right.
So we got a bunch of really awesome support from co-ops and Whole Foods and other stores that they liked the product. They knew me, and we got extra good placement. We were recommended to their buyers, and now, for example, that store in Maple Grove, the Whole Foods store, is just on fire. We have so much business there, and it's not because I'm doing demos anymore, because I'm not out there. I mean, I do special events, but the momentum was built, and that momentum got us into the whole Midwest region of Whole Foods a year, or about 17 months ago. We were invited to be in all 55 stores, so we're now across the upper Midwest and all the Whole Food stores.
And was that an exciting call to get?
Yeah, it was kind of, you can't depend on anything happening, even if it seems to make sense business-wise. When they said, yeah, you're in, I was like, wow. And it was super gratifying for one thing, because I had put so much time and effort personally into nurturing the Whole Foods accounts in the Twin Cities. So there are 7 stores here. we built a reputation here that translated into that next step. So to me, for all of those extremely long and somewhat painful days that I spent hawking barbecue sauce inside the Whole Food stores, it paid off.
Right.
And you can't, there's no other way to present yourself effectively to a buyer than having a sales record.
Right.
Like,
People
this
want
is what's
sales.
happening.
Yep.
And obviously that gives them some reason to believe that it can happen somewhere else. Of course, it's harder for us to sell outside of Minnesota because we don't have the Minnesota thing going on. It's not a local product anymore, and I'm not the one personalizing it going to Chicago.
Well, let's talk about that, because you're trying to grow in Europe.
Well, that's a whole nother story. So we've been selling in Europe and other places outside of the country for about 3 years, and we started producing our product of all places in Lithuania. So we found a co-packer in Lithuania that started to produce product.
How did that even come to be? Did someone call you from Europe and say, we want your product?
We've gone to trade shows, multiple trade shows in Europe, and landed accounts, and I landed and that started 3 years ago, 3.5. And I developed a relationship with an agent in Denmark, and
Sure.
he and I had been working together to get product placement over there, and just dealing with all the crazy logistics in terms of, creating different labels, of course, for the product, creating a different bottle size. And then
Is it worth it to go to all that trouble? I mean,
well, part of this has just been pure entertainment because
Okay.
it is novel. I mean, I like the novelty of it. I mean, it's not been easy to do any of that, and it's still much more challenging than selling barbecue sauce in the United States. I mean,
Right.
It's tricky. And one thing the reason that we ended up starting to produce over there is because the price competition is so hard. It's so radical over there. We couldn't compete at all even at my best pricing from
Right.
here. So then my buddy over there in Denmark found a co-packer that makes our kinds of products. We met them at a last fall, in fact, at a food show in Germany, and we had our first meetings, and then I went over to visit their facility at the end of last year, and then it took another 5 months to get everything lined up. I mean, it took a long time to get everything, the proper sampling that they had to do, but we had to get them a bunch of ingredients. That was the trickiest part.
Right.
Because there are certain ingredients that we have over here that we could not source over there, like including the black garlic, including the organic bourbon, and a few other ingredients that we couldn't source. So it was quite a challenge for me to get all that over there. And then it has to go through it not only has to go through the customs and the normal kind of stuff that you have to go through, but then the organic certification has to
Sure.
happen. So it's a whole nother layer. It was nerve-wracking, frankly.
But is it successful? Do people see this American barbecue sauce and think, wow?
Well, the jury's out. We're selling,
Yep.
But I think we'll know in about 6 months.
Yeah, I think that's pretty cool that you at least tried it. You seem
Yeah,
like you're
I mean, if
kind
it
of a
doesn't work,
risk-taker.
it's not the. I don't know why I'm a risk taker. I feel part of me is and part of me isn't. But I wanted to give it a shot, and I knew that people liked the product. Again, it was like here, I knew that people appreciated the product because I had been to X number of trade shows where we've got awesome feedback.
Yeah.
So then the product's good. So then are your logistics good, and is your pricing good? I
Yeah.
mean, those are the other pieces of the puzzle.
And the marketing. How do you market this?
Here, or there.
Here.
Well, here all we're doing is we continue to do some amount of in-store demos, but the most powerful thing that we do is price promotion. I'm
Yeah.
sorry to say it's not very glamorous, but it gets people's attention. So we're trying to promote new trial, obviously, and then if someone's shopping in Chicago and they see our brand on the shelf, no, they don't have any idea what it is or where it came from. But if it's at a price point that they can just say, okay, I'm just going to try it, let's do it. So that's what's most of our marketing right now, honestly, is just promoting price-wise.
Yep.
People see the yellow tag.
Well, it's a great looking product. It's super tasty. And I think I first had it about a year ago. Are you don't do farmers markets at all and that kind of thing anymore, do you?
So we did a lot over the years at the Mill City Market mostly, and that was, again, a chance for us to meet people and get feedback.
Yeah,
and,
people really see these farmers markets as more like incubators for their business.
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely offer that as advice to anybody thinking about producing a commercial product. It's the one way, do people react positively to your product? Do they buy your product? Do they come back next week or later in the summer and buy more? And that kind of feedback, is invaluable, and you're there yourself, right?
Yep.
So you're getting it and you can decide, oh, this isn't going to work, or it could work, but I'm going to have to tweak the recipes or make sure the price point is X or Y or Z. I mean, I would also argue, though, that the co-ops here especially we are blessed by having such a robust co-op scene in the Twin Cities and Minnesota and at large. Those are the stores that you mentioned risk-taking. Those are the stores that take some risks that normal stores don't take, generally speaking. If they believe in something, they'll bring it in. They'll obviously want you to come in and represent your product as well. But the co-ops are what made this business work.
I think it's a good idea to remind customers to support the co-ops, because if everything becomes sort of the big commoditized chains that I know from the business standpoint, you want to be able to grow, but to support like the Kowalskis of the world and the co-ops that we have locally and the Lunds and Byerlys and people that are small enough that they'll take a chance on a new product, it's a big point of differentiation for them that they have the local support and that they will debut local products. Mm-hmm. But B, if we continue to support them as consumers, if you don't want to do all your shopping, they're fine, but take a spin through them every now and then to mm-hmm. look at these new products, because they do a lot of I feel bad sometimes because they do a lot of the legwork about getting these local products launched. And then, the local products end up in Hy-Vee and they end up in Cub Foods. And I think they feel good about that they helped launch some of these products, but I think as consumers, it's important to remember that if we want diversity in our products, we need to support that too by visiting the local places. And
yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. And to this day, the co-ops are incredibly important for us. And those are the chains like the Lakewind stores have been so proactive and helpful over mm-hmm. the years. It's hard to even give them enough credit. Frankly.
Are there, as we're getting ready to wrap up here, are there other products that you see, like, that you just think, oh, that person's going to make it? Like, are there any products that you recommend or?
No, that's funny. No, I'm just too obsessed with my own product to worry about it. Honestly, I wish I had an answer right now. I should have an answer, but I don't. I'm afraid. All
right, no problem. How do you get inspired? Like, do you read business magazines? Do you look at Instagram? Like, how do you get your creative juices flowing to get back out and sell again? Or
good question. It's less creative actually at this point and more because I'm not looking at. We're going to tweak or create a new recipe or two in the near future, but the main thing right now is to have my head screwed on straight in the business realm, because as we get into stores, chains like Cub and others,
yep.
it becomes a whole different ballgame in terms of deciding, okay, can we afford this expansion?
Yep.
Does it, what are the odds that it's going to work? Because before we never there was never a concern. The concern was, okay, is this business going to work? But I'm just dumping, my time and money into it, yes, to some extent. But now we're making these leaps, so we're in over 500 stores, and now that we're in the more commercial, I guess the mm-hmm. commercial realm, the world of super value and such, there's some big rolls of the dice that I've never had to take before, and I can't run out there like I used to and say, okay, we're going to get into this new store or store groups, and I'm going to go do 3 or 4 demos this month, and the store staff are going to get to know me, and we're going to make this work. Well, it's not happening anymore.
Yeah, it's a different business model.
Now we just have to, we have to choose the right places to be and make some kind of educated decision as to whether or not we can afford the risk, because you never know if it's going to work. So now I don't feel very creative right now. I've just been dealing with a lot of, I've had to spend a whole bunch of money this year. And so now I need to kind of back off a little bit. And
do you put it just on
relax.
your credit cards or?
Well, pretty much so.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously I'm investing money that we're earning too.
Sure.
But it also, pretty much any new store that you're going into, you're going to have to give them a free case of product
Yep.
of every type. So in our case now, if we have 4 products, then we're giving a store. If we're getting into 130 new stores, we'll multiply that by 4, and so that's a huge investment, and you don't see any cash flow obviously for the first X number of pallets of products sold. So right now, I thank you for bringing up the idea of creative juices. I do want to get back into that because we need to focus on what's happening next year.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's where the efforts that we make in social media and maybe some other more creative marketing techniques that we might dive into, they need creative thought, and I'm good at that. That's kind of been blocked out lately by the realities.
We'll invite you back after next year.
Okay. What happened?
We have like 107 podcasts, I think, so far, and we're just circling back to talk to people that it's been 18 months now since we talked to them originally. And some of these businesses have just changed so much. It's crazy.
Yes.
So we'll revisit you to see kind of what that next creative spark looks like.
Yes.
Thank you for being here today.
My pleasure. Thanks, Stephanie.